Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session on the publication of the report, Top 10 Emerging Technologies of 2023. My name is Fred Fenter, and I'm the Chief Executive Editor at Frontiers, and I have to say this year we're really very, very pleased to be the co-publisher of this important report. This is the 11th edition of the report, but it's the first report that we're publishing together at Frontiers with the World Economic Forum. The report, from my point of view, fills an important gap by focusing on 10 exponential technologies that have real potential to provide products and services that will allow us all to live healthier lives on a healthy planet. And the track record of this report is actually quite outstanding, with mentions of CRISPR-Cas9 technology, a very early mention in 2015, and another mention of mRNA vaccines already in 2017. So it has a very good track record, and we hope this year we're going to continue with this record of success. We're very lucky today to have 3 members of the steering committee with us, and they're going to tell us a little bit about some of the technologies that were selected and provide some insight into the methodology that they used in order to whittle this down to 10 emerging technologies. So why don't we just start by saying a few words about the methodology itself. So, I'm sorry. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to introduce the panel. I was jumping the gun there. Our panel, we've gotten to know each other so well this morning that I forgot that introductions were even necessary. We have with us, sitting to my left, we have Rona Chandrawiti, who is a Scientia Associate Professor and NHRMRC Fellow at the University of South Wales in Australia. Sitting next to Rona, we have Joseph Constantin, who is an Associate Professor of Electrical and Computer Engineering at the American University of Beirut. And sitting to the left of Joseph, we have Angela Wu, who is Associate Professor at Hong Kong University of Science and Technology in Hong Kong, China. So again, let me just try to roll back. Now let's say a few words about the methodology. I think, Joseph, you're going to start?
I think Rona will
Rona, sorry, Rona, please.
Yes, so hi everyone. We are very excited about this top 10 emerging technologies. These top 10 emerging technologies are collected together. We have a steering committee that has 27 members. They are of academia, industry leaders, technologies, and futurists. So what we did is we have a list of questions of a survey that we distributed through our networks, and what the question asks is about name a technology that you think is emerging and disruptive, describe that technology, and what impact it will be within the 3 and 5 years. So we received 95 nominations, which make it really hard to drill down to 10. And what we're looking is technology that are not widely used, but we think that will be disruptive in the next 3 and 5 years. It's very hard to choose the 10, right, Joseph?
Thank you. Thank you, Rona. And I think now I will tell you guys about the difficult job that it was narrowing it down from 95 to 10. So what happened is, once we received the nominations and all these technologies, we went back and researched all of these topics and all of these nominations, and we kind of zoomed it down based on 4 criteria. And the first criteria was novelty, which means that the technology is at its early stage, it's not widely used yet. And then applicability, which means that the technology will have a significant use and benefit to societies globally. And then we looked into depth, which means that that technology is being developed by more than one company, and it is the focus of technological advancement, and it will certainly have an impact in the 3 to 5 years. And then we looked into the power, which means that this technology must be disruptive. It must actually change the world, or change the technology the way we see it right now. So back to you, Fred.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you very much. And so I think what we'll do now is we'll dive into the content of the report. There were 10 technologies that were selected, and I'm just going to start by saying that as I read through the report, it was the one on plant sensors that I found to be the most surprising. I did not expect to see an article about plant sensors in this report. So So Rona, why don't you start by telling us a little bit how plant sensors made it to the final cut of 10?
Thank you, Fred. So wearable plant sensors. So we know everyone, almost all of us, we have a wearable health tracker, and then what it does is it has an electrode and it can measure our health. So why not the same or similar principle for the plant sensors? So why this technology is in the top 10 this year is it's also because with the increasing population, so by 2015 we need to produce 70% more food. So that means we need better farming, better agriculture, and better food production. So there has been many technologies to monitor plant health. There's drones that can collect data on a different level of resolutions. So this year, uniquely, we want to identify and showcase wearable plant sensors. So basically, they are a sensor patch that are attached to plant leaf or stem that can monitor individual plant health. And the idea is when we can monitor them to measure the temperature, humidity, soil and nutrient, farmers can do an intervention. For example, has enough fertilizer, we don't need to put any more fertilizers, enough moisture, we need to monitor the irrigation. So by monitoring all of this, we can have a personalized agriculture, better farming, and therefore better production of food.
Thank you, Rona. Sustainable agriculture is really, really important. And where there are sensors, we need batteries, right, Joseph? So why don't you say a little bit about the flexible batteries, which is another one of the technologies that was selected for the final list of 10.
Yes, flexible batteries is one of the technologies that I'm personally very excited about. And it's one of the technologies that we discussed a lot during our many meetings in narrowing these down into 10 technologies. So as Rona said, flexible sensors require or are needed basically to monitor plant health, but at the same time, all these sensors, whether for plant, for humans, for, as Angela also would speak in a little bit, whatever the application is, they need power. And this power can come from regular batteries the way we know them, but for flexibility, flexible batteries are proving to be a very good contender. In fact, there has been many flexible batteries of many types that are being already commercialized, and at the same time they are composed of lithium ion or the same composition of any batteries, except that they are built on flexible material. They are integral in powering wearable sensors, wearable technology, flexible screens, nanotechnology, a lot of applications. And in fact, if you want to learn more about this, you can come to the Hub B today at 3:30 p.m. to talk about flexible batteries in particular.
Thanks, Joseph. Yes, and as Joseph points out, there will be a session for each of these technologies that we're going to be talking about in this meeting in more depth later in this annual meeting of the new champions. So, Angela, it's to you now. We've talked about wearable sensors. We've talked about flexible batteries. How about potential medical applications of the technology?
Yeah, I mean, health is definitely another major focus of this year's WEF in general. And I think it's probably not unfamiliar to this audience that aging is a big issue that we face all around the world with aging populations. And associated with that are neurodegenerative diseases, general health issues related to the brain and the central nervous system. And so with these accumulated technologies in terms of materials and electronics, over time, these have been very well applied in the area of health and neuroscience. So both from the fundamental level of understanding the brain and how the brain works and how the brain deteriorates over time, to more applied areas of how can we address these issues and apply them in the clinic, and then even more so, can we then also apply them in our daily lives to just improve quality of life? All these things require sensors that are applicable to the brain, but in a comfortable and more sort of day-to-day usable kind of fashion. So that's where the topic that I curated this year, flexible neural sensors or flexible neural electronics, comes in to the discussion. Sort of these materials and soft electronic circuits that have been created are now enabling us to create sensors or electronics that can sort of conform to the soft tissue of the brain, allowing us not only, say, in the lab to use it to continually monitor animal studies of the brain, but also in the future, perhaps in the clinic, we can use them to help patients who are paraplegic or paralyzed to control prosthetic arms, to better interpret their thoughts and what they intend to do. So these are all very important application areas. And it's sort of these flexible batteries and also flexible circuits that are enabling this to become more of a reality. So this is the area that I wrote a piece on, and we also have a session later to delve into that a bit more.
Okay, Angela, thank you very much. And I see we're moving along actually quite well. Are there any of the other technologies that you'd like to say something about that you found particularly exciting in this year's report? Joseph, is there something that comes to mind?
I mean, of course, AI application in healthcare is one of the technologies that is mentioned in the report, and I believe is already transforming the world. And AI is applied, in terms of processing the data. We know that sensors are the ones that collect the data, but at the end, you need to process the data and extract the information needed. So AI in healthcare is definitely one of the ones that are already making a big impact.
Okay, thank you, Joseph. And Rona, is there something that comes to mind on your side?
Yeah, I think in one of the top 10 emerging technology, we have designer phage, which is have a very strong relevance in healthcare. So what it does is phage is a virus that contains protein nucleic acid that can specifically infect bacteria. So what is the applications here is we can cleverly engineer this phage so they can selectively target bacteria, and this is very important, especially now there is antibiotic-resistant bacteria where antibiotics are not very good anymore in killing bacteria. So phage will be, we are quite excited about how this phage can deal with this antibiotic-resistant bacteria.
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much, Rona. And Angela, what do you think? Which are you going to pick from the list?
Yeah, I'm going to throw in a plug for an area of research that's actually close to my area of research, which is the genomics, spatial omics research or technology that has emerged in the past couple of years. You may have heard of genomics, right? The sequencing of DNA and also RNA to understand biology of the cell, to understand human health. So now, rather than just taking a tissue and sort of grinding it into a milkshake and then trying to understand the DNA of that tissue, now we can actually just take that tissue, use imaging technology and look at it, and then know what DNA or what activity is going on inside the cell. So this might sound a little abstract when I talk about the technology side, but let me just tell you already some of the new findings that researchers have discovered using this technology. One of the things is regeneration. So there are these animals called axolotls. They're these salamanders that can regenerate. So even if you cut off a part of their brain, they can regrow that part of the brain. Fascinating, right? Scientists didn't know how that happened for a long time. So using this spatial sequencing technology, they did an experiment where they cut off a part of the lizard's brain and watched it grow back over time. And they were able to find a specific type of neural cells that contributed to this regeneration of the brain. So similarly, in a mouse study, they found certain cells that helped the mouse to recover movement after their spinal cord was injured. So this technology is really helping us to understand some of the biological mysteries of life. And it's very exciting for me because I work in this area.
Thank you very much, Angela. And I think, in terms of going through the different technologies, we could, my plan is to not reveal everything. So you'll all be encouraged to go and download the report and read the ones that we didn't get a chance to touch on. The report can be found at wef.ch/reports. That's the news I have. And so please, everyone, take the time to download the document. The descriptions of the technology are very readable. They're very accessible, and that's where their impact, I think, is going to be deriving from. I think the one last thing I'd like to say is that we heard Premier Lee talk about entrepreneurship, and The foundation of entrepreneurship is science and technology, and I think that that's really one of the importance of this report. So what we're talking about here is the knowledge base that will provide the next generation of entrepreneurship. So that's one reason why we're particularly excited to be involved in this report. But I do want to take some time to field some questions from our audience today. I do hope that we have one or two people that are brave enough to raise their hand to ask a question. So please, okay, we have a question here, please.
Hi, thank you so much to all the panelists for sharing the wonderful insights. My question is to Rona. So I really admire the technology that you mentioned about plant sensors. And I'm a global shaper from India where plant sensors would have a wonderful use case for the farmers where agriculture is very uncertain and intervening at the right time could save a lot of crop failures. So, however, we often see that financing is quite an issue for smallholding farmers, and even interpreting the data that we get from these sensors is kind of an issue. So how can governments or businesses ensure that there is effective deployment of this technology?
Yes, thank you.
I think it's a very good question. I think we can even expand that a little bit about the effects of financials across all the different emerging technologies if we have time. So Rona, what do you think?
Yes, thank you very much for the questions. For the wearable plant sensors, I think one of the challenge is the cost because it's a new technology. But I believe with the emerging and the increasing miniaturizations, it will bring down the cost further, and especially for technology to work, it's very important for it to be low cost so that it's accessible. So there's something that I'm excited to see about and hopefully can see it in the future. And in terms of the data interpretations, so once the data collected, we need to have a data analysis and interpretation of how it works, because what we don't want to do is we misinterpret the data and therefore it's not on a precision agriculture. So I think this is another area where artificial intelligence will play a key role, and data analytics in that. So we are very excited to see where the future is going.
That's good. That's great. I think, okay, we have a question here.
Hi, I'm Sangu Deli of YGL from Ghana. My question is with respect to the AI for healthcare piece. There's huge potential for AI. I run a tech-forward healthcare group across the continent. So there's a huge potential which we see, especially with dealing with chronic diseases as the disease burden has shifted from infectious to more NCDs. But the reality is in a lot of the pilots we've done, to get the right amount of data, and to get the data structured in a way that would make it accessible for you to be able to build those algorithms require a certain baseline of digitization and interoperability that currently doesn't exist. So if I look at Africa in particular, where I think there's the greatest need, right, given that it's 15% of global population, 25% of global disease burden, 3% of global healthcare workers, how do we deal with the data challenge, right?
Mm-hmm.
In getting all these systems to be able to speak to each other and to be able to abstract all the data in ways that could be useful for AI.
Interesting. So when the steering committee was considering the AI-facilitated healthcare, was the question of data access one of the elements that was raised during the conversation?
Yeah, so maybe I'll touch on that because I was part of the group that did that discussion. So I think you're absolutely right. I think accessibility is one of the things we discussed extensively in that discussion. And I think that not only data acquisition, but also, as you say, how to integrate it into the infrastructure and leverage, other existing resources available is a big part of it. But I think that's exactly why we chose this topic, because a lot of AI technologies can actually enable more accessible healthcare, enable data to be shared securely, but also more easily. And I do want to give a shout out to one of the past reports where we actually identified cloud computing and distributed computing as an emerging technology, which indeed now has become very important. So not having to build a very large local data structure to do all those things that you're talking about is a big advantage. And I think we as a global community, need to continue discussing that and making sure that it is accessible to everyone. Yeah, so thank you for the question. Great question.
You have a question here in front, please.
First of all, let me say that it's a brilliant selection of panel, and I'm so happy to see so brilliant women as well.
We have a microphone here. Right?
The first comment was that we have amazing women in the panel, and I'm so glad to see brilliant women here. So both to Professor Wu and Professor Chandravati, I wanted to say thank you so much for raising, I'm from Amazon Web Services, first of all. I'm the healthcare technical lead for ABJ. Thank you so much for raising the cloud computing as one of the solutions to create this overarching enabling tool where labs can actually collaborate. My question to you is, you mentioned very pioneering fields like spatial omics. I'm pretty sure a lot of people will read this review, and maybe it's the first time they ever hear this field. So thank you for raising fields like these. Do you believe that perhaps pioneering people like you should also be the first to introduce to policymakers what sort of policy recommendations we need so that it is actually possible to use this type of technologies and aggregate big data from anywhere and be able to analyze them in the cloud? Because otherwise it's going to be very tricky to have this type of technologies enabled everywhere and used by any type of country in any place.
Okay, thank you very much. The role of policy actually is quite critical in many contexts in terms of taking technology and building towards solutions. So I don't know, Angela, would you like to add? Joseph?
I think the question is for the ladies. Anyone would like to?
I can kick off first.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks very much for the question. I completely agree about engaging with policymakers. So I can probably tell about my experience. So my area of research is in sensors. I don't particularly specifically work with plant sensors, so I work on food sensors and sustainable packaging. And we really, in order to have it, to push this technology for wide distributions, is we are actively engaging with food industries and to policymakers, and I think we are very excited to see that there is a push on sustainable packaging, and I think on that hand it's also about how we reduce food waste and therefore implementation of food sensors. So I believe with the similar principle, with actively communicating about what this technology about, and also be upfront about the risks and challenges so that we can mitigate them clearly in the early stage of the technology as well.
It's okay. I just want to add, thank you, Rona. I just want to add that it's very important to accept, or at least to understand the fact that we're going to have a lot of sensors, a lot of wearable sensors, and the technology is moving in that direction. So there is a lot of venues to collect data, and which pushes actually, and this is very important that in the report we're talking about flexible batteries, we talk about plant sensors, we're talking about healthcare. In previous reports, we talked about a lot of other very important technologies, but that should push governments to issue very clear policies, especially in regards to data privacy and data security. And in addition to, of course, cleaning up the data and understanding and having access to the data, but having very clean, secure access to the data is very important, because data is going to be present and it's going to be more abundant as we move forward. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Joseph. I don't know, Angela, if you'd like to add something to the subject, or
maybe just a very quick point. So
okay.
I am an academic. Actually, we are all academics, and I think when you talk about policy, you also need to talk about education. Although when you say policy, you're talking about regulatory policy, talking to regulation makers, but I think the outreach in terms of educating the general public on what these technologies are, just as what we're here to do today, is also important. And then talking to young people about ethics of technologies is also very important. I mean, all of these health technologies, as well as these sort of big data applications, they all come with ethical discussions as well. Mm-hmm. So I think the younger we can get people aware about ethics, the more, in the future we can have better discussions about ethics and therefore make better policy. So that's just a a slightly tangential point that I do want to point out.
Okay, thanks, Angela. We have time for one more question.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Aaron Sherwood, Global Shaper from London Hub 2. Just extending that point you made around wearable sensors. With any new emerging technology, we're always met with resistance to change, and there's always a lot of headwinds. What do you see as the biggest barrier to adoption of wearable sensors, and how do we overcome that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, so thank you for the question. All right, so basically these technologies are in the report because they are already there. So they have emerged and they are already making an impact, and they will be in our reality in 3 to 5 years. So, but your question is more about what helps people accept. So there are a lot of challenges. First challenge, I think, goes to the actual hardware, to actually designing sensors or designing wearables that are biocompatible, that can fit into your daily routine, that you don't have to go out of your way to get to wear that wearable. So they have to fit into what your everyday usage is, and they have to fit your schedule, your routine. You don't have to change your life for them. So I think that's a big challenge in terms for companies that are making wearables to take into consideration. They have to be user-friendly and human-centered. I mean, I'm using these buzzwords because that's kind of the key in any design of a wearable. And then you have the next challenge, which I think is about, as I said before, about ensuring that whatever data is being collected about you is being secured, is being privacy is respected, and at the same time, it's giving you accurate results. So if you're wearing a sensor that detects a certain biomarker in your blood, let's say glucose or whatever, anything, that sensor should be able to give you an exact and accurate determination. If it's a continuous sensor, then continuously it must, and accurately it must tell you what is the level of that biomarker in your blood. So that ensuring that accuracy, while relying as well on data analytics and AI and all of that, okay, is another challenge that must be overcome. And this can happen with trials, with clinical trials, and with a lot of studies, of course, as every wearable device does. I'm not sure if Rona and Angela want to add something to.
No, I think it sounds great.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Well, thank you.
Okay, terrific. I think we might be able to squeeze in one more question if we have. Okay, we have a question here, please.
Thank you. My question goes to Professor Constantin, and I want to focus on the generative artificial intelligence, which is really a hot issue these days. But at the same time, many are concerned about the threats about generative artificial intelligence. So my question is, what do you think of the opportunities and threats brought by generative AI, and how do we strike a balance between the two? What considerations should be taken into account when we deploy the AI system? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I want to start answering the question by saying this is not my specialty. My research area is in applied electromagnetics and designing of wearables and sensors and medical devices. But I will attempt an answer, and then maybe Rona and Angela can help.
It's going to have to be a very quick attempt because we're running out of time. Yeah.
Okay, so basically, I think you're right. I think there is a lot of concern about generative AI, and I think the concerns are correct. There should be a lot of concerns about this. And I believe that we have a long way ahead of us in terms of improving the performance of generative AI. However, I believe we are already seeing the positive outcomes of this technology and the impact of this technology. And I'm very optimistic that the future will hold for us a lot of positive outcomes from generative AI in different applications. We talk about ChatGPT, we talk about a lot of different things, but not only that, but mainly in a lot of various applications, from the movie industry, from the, from a lot of other applications, but that's what I can say about. I'm not sure if I missed anything.
Okay, well, I think we're going to have to wrap up at this point. So yes, First of all, I'd like to thank our panelists today, Angela, Joseph, and Rona. I think it was an incredible 30 minutes. It was very compact. We got so much information in. Under the theme of entrepreneurship, we touched upon issues of data access and privacy, access to resources, policy, education, ethics, psychological factors of adopting new technology. So I think it's been an incredibly interesting and rich discussion in just 30 minutes. Again, the report can be downloaded online, and there are going to be 3 hub sessions that will treat the 3 subjects that on flexible batteries, flexible neural electronics, and plant sensors. That will happen this afternoon and then tomorrow during the day. So check your schedules and make sure also to be there for those events. Thank you very much.